Welcome to the 15th Annual Bio CEO and Investor Conference. My name is Nathan Tinker, and I'm the Executive Director of the New York Biotechnology Association. And on behalf of the 250 members of New York's Bioscience Trade Association, I'd like to welcome you not only to the event today, but to New York City and what we like to call Snowmageddon. Depending on which part of town you were in, it was better or worse. But hopefully, you obviously all were able to get out and get to this great meeting. It's not every day that we get to have a fireside chat like this. Not only because of the great fire that we have going, it looks like Channel 11 on Christmas morning, but also to have a CEO whose company just had a major piece of news come out on Friday, and I'll let our moderator talk about that a little bit. But if you've been following at all what's been going on with Celgene, they were called the darling of the JP Morgan conference. Big pieces of news have been coming out with steadily, and I think that there's great things to be said, not only for Celgene as a company, but for its impact on the region and northern New Jersey and New York City as well. Now, for our panel, not even a panel, for our fireside chat today, is going to be moderated by Joel Sendick. Joel has had quite a career following the biotech industry. He's about 16 years as an analyst, currently with Stifel Nicolaus. Did I say it right?
You did.
I did, okay.
Impressive.
And before that, Lazard, a man who knows the players, knows the industry, and knows how to talk about it. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joel Sendick.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. Is my mic on okay? All right, great. Well, welcome, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to Bob Hugin, who is CEO of Celgene. And Celgene's one of our buy-rated stocks at Stifel Nicolaus. We love the story. It's been off to a phenomenal start this year. And what I wanted to do for the fireside chat is obviously talk about the news from Friday and today, but also give Bob a couple questions about the biotech industry in general, since this is I think the 15th anniversary, is that right, Celia, of the Bio CEO Conference, one of my favorite conferences, outside, of course, from the Stifel Conference. And Bob has agreed to share his views with us in that regard. But if we can just maybe, excuse me, start with the approval from Friday on Pomalyst, another major accomplishment on the part of Celgene. If you can talk about what it took to get the drug approved and background on pricing and how you think the drug will make an impact.
Sure. No, thanks, Joel, and certainly appreciate being here. I even left a little early, got here early, so it was good to get caught up with some people I haven't seen for a while. So it's great to be here. Yeah, Friday we were fortunate to get Pomalyst approved, which is a drug that came from our own laboratories, discovered at Celgene, and the clinical programs being developed by Celgene, and approved for relapsed refractory myeloma. We think it'll be a big advance for patients in the United States. We have also submitted in Europe, and we're hopeful that we'll get approval here later this year in Europe so we can make the product available to patients both in the United States and in Europe. It really is very complementary to our program in myeloma and gives another important product for late-stage myeloma and really positions it right after Revlimid. So we're feeling very good about its opportunity. We'll be announcing the pricing in the next couple of days. We have one of the issues when you have a risk management system, and we have risk management systems for thalidomide, for lenalidomide, Revlimid, and for pomalidomide, Pomalyst. We wanted to make sure those were harmonized, and the FDA at the same time approved the changes to Revlimid and thalidomide or Thalamid and with Pomalyst so that we have the easiest possible risk management system for physicians and patients, et cetera. So when we launch in about 10 days, we'd expect to have that all done easily and pricing announced in the next couple of days, with the expectation that based on the size of the population, you would see it as a slight premium to Revlimid in terms of a pricing.
How about relative to carfilzomib in the market right now? It came onto the market 6 months ago. Are you do you view the objective for Celgene to take share in a way, or is it more they're in a bit of a separate category given the mechanism?
Yeah, I think being different mechanistically, I think our opportunity is to really get the data out there. We think the data is very powerful in terms of its activity post-Revlimid, post-bortezomib, and I think it'll find its strong home based on the data. So we don't really necessarily look at it as a direct competitor in that regard. I think in myeloma, one of the great advances for patients has been the fact that you have this sequential therapy for multiple new therapies. And I think myeloma has been one of the diseases where it's been almost a role model for other cancers to identify a set of patients that can really be impacted with new therapies. And ideally, the goal is to cure the disease, but to make it as quickly as possible a chronic disease, as long as possible as a chronic disease before you actually have the cure. So I think the proteasome inhibitors will continue to fight out their position for how you do that. And I think our drugs are well positioned. Obviously, an oral drug, the tolerability in the studies have been good so far, and the safety profile very well understood. So we think Pomalyst will find its place and really make a difference for patients.
Okay, thanks. So how about there's news just this morning, a couple minutes ago, on China, for example. Can you talk a little bit about that and possible other emerging market approvals?
Yeah. This morning we announced a short regulatory update for Revlimid, that we had received approval in China for relapsed refractory myeloma, and with the import license and all that, we're hopefully to begin commercialization the middle of third quarter of this year, and over time build that into a meaningful market. And we also announced that we had priority review for mantle cell lymphoma application that we had submitted in the fourth quarter for Revlimid in the United States, just to hopefully make Revlimid available for that indication a few months earlier than we would have anticipated when we submitted. So we're excited about that prospect to get that there. And I think both of those are tactical announcements that are important for us when we think about Revlimid in the context of growing Revlimid as a continued important growth driver for us, that both expanding geographies, expanding indications, and at the same time continuing with the data that supports expanded duration of the use of Revlimid in continuous therapy. So an important part of our longer term strategy of growing Revlimid.
All right, good. So that brings us up to date on the news. I wanted to take a step back and once again, as I mentioned before, ask Bob a couple questions about the biotech industry. Some of you might know Bob will become the chairman of Pharma, which is the industry group for the pharmaceutical manufacturers. Obviously, Celgene is a biotech company, but the difference between pharma companies and biotech companies is becoming more opaque, I would say. And maybe I'll start with that. You know, what is Celgene? Is Celgene a biotech
I think
or a pharma?
you know, we're a member of Bio, and we're very strong supporters of Bio, and we're also obviously engaged at Pharma. I think it is important that we all advocate for the issues that are important to the health of the ecosystem of innovation in healthcare, and I think that Bio does a great job of that, and Pharma has a very important role also in that. I think that, in my own opinion, is that one of the few beneficial outcomes of the challenging economic times we've had these last 4 or 5 years globally has been the recognition that you can't have innovation and success in terms of better patient outcomes, lower cost in healthcare, better value propositions in healthcare, if we don't have integrated solutions, and that we can't have people arguing, saying that we need to invest in basic research in NIH, we need to invest in academic medicine, we need to have policies that help small companies have a better opportunity to have clarity of regulatory standards and access to capital and markets based on that. Large company reimbursement programs and policies need to be consistent to support kind of long-term investments that we make in R&D that are a fundamental part of the innovation in the healthcare ecosystem. I think the realization is, and I'm optimistic that we're seeing some positive benefits of it, that there is no success if we all don't succeed, and there isn't this integrated approach to solutions where we need to have a well-funded NIH, we need to have the FDA advancing programs that can bring it to a scientific level to be adequately review the programs and the products and the type of science that is really in the 21st century. So that, I think, whether it's pharma, bio, everyone needs to understand there's a vested interest in supporting policies that are progressive in terms of bringing solutions for patients, which in the end, if we do it right, we're going to have better outcomes and over time lower costs. And I think for our industry overall, it's extremely important that we advocate aggressively, because when you look at the crises that we have all around the world, the simplest solution is say, cut this, have rationing, have retrenchment, and those being solutions. And those are really short-sighted solutions. I think there's some very important positive things that we should be focused on. In December of this past year, for the first time ever, the Congressional Budget Office agreed and changed its policies in the way it looks at healthcare costs for pharmaceuticals. It now says that it will reduce other medical services expenditures for each 1% rise in pharmaceutical usage. So there's finally a recognition that if you treat people properly, you actually can reduce other medical costs. And there's so much data out there that says that's part of the solution. And it is critical that we don't let short-sighted, near-term cost pressures lead us to policies that can really have damaging effects. And I always say that, yes, we're very supportive of trying to help protect the NIH. We need basic research, but when you look at where the drugs have come from, they've come from industry, whether it be small companies, large companies. And if we make mistakes in some funding, the government can change that funding the next year and make a correction. But the policies that affect us and our industry in terms of regulatory issues, reimbursement issues, often take 10, 20, 30 years to be reversed. If we change programs in Medicare that affect our ability to invest in R&D, those changes don't get reversed but for another generation, and the consequences are very serious. And so I'm optimistic that people recognize we have to be engaged together in a collaborative, integrated way to ensure the best policies are legislated and approved across the country and across the world. But we have to be aggressive in that. And that's why at Celgene, though, we have a lot of work to do at our company. We're very excited about what's happening at Celgene. We're really focused this year on capitalizing on the progress we made in 12 and creating new opportunities in 13. But at the same time, if the whole ecosystem isn't conducive to investing in innovation, it's hard for any company to be successful.
Well, one of the things, I want to go one step beyond that and continue along the line of these bigger picture questions and pose to you a question that I get almost every day, which is the big four biotechs, you guys, Gilead, Amgen, and Biogen, have just been so successful over in particular 2012. All four of the companies are trading at all-time highs, as far as near all-time highs, if not all-time highs, on stock price and market cap. And the question I get is, okay, is there anything left? Is there more? Are you going to have the appreciation, the growth, the stock price appreciation in the next coming years, or are these companies evolving into slower-moving pharma companies? And how would you answer that for Celgene?
Yeah, no, it's a good, fair question. I mean, I only talk specifically about Celgene, and we think about this issue all the time because we do believe that small groups, small units, small companies have an environment conducive to creative thinking, to challenging the conventional wisdom, taking on questions and seeking answers in areas where other companies won't take the risk, et cetera. So I think for us, we are a very fortunate company. It wasn't that long ago we were a very small company, a survival company, and I remember the articles that said we were one of the top 10 companies to go bankrupt in the country and stuff. So, we know what that's like. So I think it is very important that you understand for your own company, what are the key success factors? What is it that you do well? What is the competitive advantage you have? And how do you extend that to capture long-term gains? And I think that you have to be very focused on it. I think you have to be recognize what your business model is, and you have to ensure that you are focused on the right things to create sustainable long-term growth. At Celgene, we feel very strongly about that, and I think from a shareholder point of view, we're very robust and rigorous about the discussions we have about it. If we can't retain the character of the company and the willingness to take risks and make important decisions to capitalize on our advantages, we shouldn't be either one company or whatever the case might be, because unless you really believe you can sustain that advantage, you should look at other ways to ensure that you do capture that value. So we're very aggressive, whether we look at capital structure and use of our cash, whether we look at business combinations to ensure that we continue the energy in the company. I think that part of our business development strategy which is focused on having an expert, high quality, internal, value-added research capability. I don't think you should be doing business development if you don't have expertise internally to identify the opportunities that you have for yourself and then and leverage them by business collaborations and acquisitions. At the same time, I think you can use those collaborations to really energize the company. I think Pharmion was a good example for us. That was a company that was very successful, project-oriented. It energized us to be more of a project-oriented company. A number of those people are important leaders of our company today. So we look at the business combinations to energize us. But I think you have to make sure that you retain the character, the advantages that you have, and you have to be convinced that you have competitive advantage ongoing. And I think that we still view Celgene as an experiment. One of my missions at Celgene has been, how do we ensure that where we have competitive advantage, we extend it into the future? So the IMiD platform is one that I feel very strongly, where 5 years ago, we were making good progress with existing compounds and looking for new chemical scaffolds to extend that, where today I feel so positive and optimistic about the future, not just because of our ability to translate our traditional advantage in chemistry for new scaffolds and products for the next 10 years, but the combination of understanding the actual biology and combining that with new scaffolds. I think that pipeline is going to be incredibly promising for the next 20 years in multiple indications that we have not historically pursued up to this date. Epigenetics is other ones. So I think you have to be very clear we have competitive advantage and ensure that you can make those investments. And that's been my job, to ensure that we take the history and extend it into the future. But at the same time, I think that it is an experiment. And our view is that we've been successful for certain reasons that energize us, that unite us, whether it's the patient and the science, that combining those two energizes the people. But we have to retain the culture and the character, and we fight hard not to become bureaucratic, not to grow in areas where we don't have competitive advantage. We look to outsource certain, and we're in the middle of a process of certain parts of our operations on the medical side to say, let's only retain internally the things that we need to control and where we have a competitive advantage, that we can do them with great excellence and have operating excellence, and let someone else do the other things that we shouldn't do. So I think overall, it's a very important question. We shouldn't be just bigger for the sake of being bigger. We want to be better at what we do what we have competitive advantage at, and really invest in the future, take those risks to ensure we have sustainable long-term growth. And I'm not looking to leave Celgene or anything like that, but I really sincerely, I tell people, I say, when the time comes for me to leave Celgene, I say, I hope people say, he did a good job and said nice things or whatever else, but I think the most important thing I hope they say is, why the heck did we leave? The next 5 years look so bright and the future is so promising. So I think you have to invest in the future. Great things don't happen by accident, but you have to make good decisions, tough decisions, and focus where you can achieve great results.
So drilling down on one of those topics, if I look at the big four companies, you have Gilead going outside their comfort zone a little bit, going into oncology, for example, an area that they actually divested years ago. You have Biogen really honing in, focusing almost exclusively on neurology and multiple sclerosis. Amgen is kind of now going into primary care more than they have in the past, and even mentioned last week an emphasis on biosimilars. And when I look at Celgene, I say to myself, okay, it's exactly as you said. It's diversification into I&I, for example, but not too far out of your comfort zone in hematology going into oncology. Are you contemplating other areas beyond oncology, hematology, and I&I, or is that enough? Obviously, on the basis of your projections, you can double revenues just with what you have. What kind of thought process goes into that?
Well, I think it's important to have a plan so you know where you're headed. But at the same time, you have to be opportunistic. But I think you have to be careful about where you take the risks. I don't think you produce outstanding results without taking risks. I think when you look at the risks that we've taken that have really catapulted us and allowed us to leverage them, the decision to go alone outside the United States with Revlimid was a very important fundamental risk of the company. And we felt on doing complete analysis that there was great opportunity because of the power of the molecule. But at the same time, the industry dynamics were such that we felt outside the United States, like we had been successful in the United States, that we would be able to hire great people. And so we felt the risks were asymmetric. The reward was greater, we understood the risks, and it made sense for us. And when we think about I&I, we think about it very much in the same way. We have to have a competitive advantage. Obviously, in research, it's pretty hard to differentiate in many cases with the intracellular signaling pathways dysregulated between inflammatory disease, immunological diseases, and cancer. So there's synergies in there. The focus in the clinical area where we think in a focused specialty areas, there's good synergies, logic, and expertise. Commercial, it is a very different expertise required to be success, but you have to believe you have a molecule that will give you the leverage to get access and opportunity to deliver the messages, and you have to have the confidence that you'll be able to hire the people that will lead that effort in a way that will produce outstanding success. And so we also are seeing those same asymmetric risk profile from what we believe we can achieve with the quality of the organization we can build and deliver it. So I think you have to be willing to take risk, but I think you have to take smart risks that are focused on where you have strength and advantage and not risk for the sake of taking risks. And I think that diversification for the sake of diversification is a bad thing, but obviously if you can diversify in your areas of expertise, there's great benefit to that from lowering the discount rate on future cash flows and the leverage of the organization. So I think for us, from a research point of view, we understand where we have advantage and where we have expertise, and we have to make sure we're focused in those areas. And if those areas lead us to a place where we can make a profound difference in the way medicine is practiced or the science that enables that is clear, then we will take the risks if we understand them and can manage it and believe the rewards, again, are asymmetric to the cost and that risk. So I think that you want to have a plan, you want to know that you have competitive advantage, you need to take risks, you need to understand them, and you do have to be bold when you have the opportunity to do something that can make a difference. And so if we saw the opportunity to really make a difference scientifically and medically, we would take those chances, but where we focus is where we have expertise.
So I want to drill down on two of those points that you made. One is, as far as the decision years ago to take Revlimid, to market Revlimid on your own. And right now, you just got the China approval. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges there and why you will be able to make that a major market, given all the, right now branded hematology drugs are only 100 million, right, around that number.
There are multiple $100 million oncology drugs.
Okay.
Total.
So how do you address that challenge given reimbursement and the intellectual property issues and those sort of things? Then I have another question on the I&I.
Sure. China to me is, everyone knows the numbers, 1.3 billion and 300 million middle class. All the numbers I think are well understood in the marketplace. I do think you have to be realistic about expectations in China. I think it is a very important market to be engaged with. I think there's opportunities to have good financial returns. But I think any company that, I'll speak only for Celgene, I think with China, you have to have a China strategy. The metrics you use for the amount of money you invest in the country has to be consistent with your plan as to what returns you can achieve. I think you have to have China timelines and China metrics, and I don't think that you should say you did this in Germany, you did this in Japan, or you did this in the United States, you did this anywhere in the world. You need to have a very specific set of metrics for China. I think it can be an attractive market, but at one, you have to have, it has to stand on its own, has to be logical, and has to make sense for you. And I think, but it does take time. It's not a market where you're going to see good, steady growth over time is our strategy.
And what you said about I&I is kind of similar in the sense that you took a decision to not bring on a partner, but to roll out apremilast on your own. Can you give us some background as to what made you take that decision and how you have the competitive advantage in a large, growing, but highly competitive market?
Yeah, I mean, just to recap apremilast quickly, in 2012, we had 3 positive phase 3 studies in the largest psoriatic arthritis program, largest phase 3 psoriatic arthritis program ever undertaken. 3 positive phase 3 studies and a positive Behçet's study. The Behçet's study I mentioned, even though it's a phase 2 study and may or may not have regulatory benefit, it demonstrates the usefulness of the drug in a very difficult to treat inflammatory condition. It also shows the rapid onset of the drug in that indication. And then earlier this quarter, early in January, we had positive data from the 2 pivotal psoriasis studies. So we have 5 positive pivotal studies, and some of the data on psoriasis will be out, we believe, in medical meetings in the coming 1 to 2 months, next coming few months. So we think we have a very, very good drug there, and we are planning to take advantage of it and capture it in the markets where we believe specialists can be accessed by a reasonably sized commercial organization. In the United States, it's our goal this quarter to submit psoriatic arthritis application. Later in the year, the psoriasis application. So we have 2 different applications in the U.S. Rheumatology Division, Dermatology Division. In Canada will also be the same strategy. So that'll be a market right along with the United States. In Europe, the decision and the discussions with the EMA was to have 1 application. So we have to wait for the psoriasis data. So in the second half of the year, we'll submit psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis application for apremilast in Europe and other markets around the world. So our timeline is a launch in 2014, in the first half of 2014 in the United States. And so we are going full bore ahead to ensure that we are ready and able to do that. We believe that is a very attractive opportunity for us. The ex-US is a year behind that. So though we are moving down the tracks of going alone, we also are pursuing other discussions with other entities for geographical areas, indications, et cetera. Though the base case is that we believe that the molecule is an ideal compound to meet what is becoming more and more clear to people of a very, very important market segment of a active, well-tolerated oral compound early in therapy for psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, and other inflammatory conditions. And again, by the end of this year, we're hopeful to have ankylosing spondylitis phase 3 pivotal study fully accrued by the end of this year is our goal. So we think the molecule really is ideally suited to fit an incredibly large market opportunity. And so we learn a lot from partnering discussions. We learn a lot from lots of other activities that are happening in the marketplace. We have not made a final decision on our commercialization strategy globally yet, though we are going down the road of going our own. And not dissimilar to the strategy and the discussions and the planning that we had when we thought about Revlimid outside the United States. One of the key factors is will you be able to attract the quality of people in terms of expertise and experience and culture to be able to be successful in that competitive space and in the Celgene way of doing business. And again, we're still earlier on in that process, but I have to tell you, the quality of people that we are so far have either attracted or are in the middle of reviewing opportunities with, it is pretty
You're
impressive.
talking about salespeople or just regulatory?
Leadership.
Okay,
Leadership, whether it's from less so regulatory, because we have a fairly advanced regulatory good group, medical affairs, additional clinical people, leadership from a broad-based franchise capability, and commercial leadership from, but the people we've hired so far are people that have all of those attributes. Expertise in the area, because this is not something where you say, hey, I was good at this, I'm going to be good at that. You need to be expert. This is a different marketplace, and you have to have expertise and experience in that marketplace. But you also have to have people who have the kind of personal character that really understand the way we do business and how we view success. And so we're very encouraged by what we've seen so far. But in the United States, we're going down that road. If we were to change that, it'd have to happen in the next near term. So I think it's fair to assume that the United States, we're headed alone. We have another year in terms of the timing outside the United States in most markets. So we'll continue to look at our options there, but with the base case of going alone.
I wanted to throw out a couple numbers, and maybe you can help us understand a little bit as far as the market size. So the TNFs have single-digit share in the psoriasis market. And I'm wondering your thoughts with regard to, but yet they sell hundreds of millions of dollars, which proves to me how big the market is in that setting. And do you see apremilast effectively being used in advance of the TNFs, in competition to the TNFs, expanding the overall market? What's your viewpoint with regard to that?
Again, I think it's indication by indication, geography by geography. I think there'll be different outcomes in different marketplaces and different diseases. I think it's going to have an impact on pricing also as to where you do it. But when you think about the profile of apremilast, it is ideally suited to be pre-biologic. When you look at the safety profile, you look at the activity profile, and it'll become more clear over the course of this year. It's ideally suited. And when you think about the percentage of the marketplace that is treated by biologics, it's still a relatively small percentage of the marketplace. So I don't see it as a direct competitor, though I think in this kind of marketplace, you have to be prepared for direct competition because the positioning of the drug is very important. So we'll be very aggressive in that regard. But I don't think anything, it'll just change the sequencing of how drugs are prescribed over time. And I think it should be a very beneficial, positive development for patients to be able to have an oral therapy with the side effect profile that we believe it demonstrates, and we'll go through the regulatory process here this year. And then make that point from a commercial point of view that you have the right kind of payer discussion so that the patient, the payer, the physician, and we all see value in that proposition.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. I want to turn to more specific questions on Revlimid. And I guess any discussion with you can't go without asking about MM020 maybe?
Sure.
Time frame, if you can just bring us up to date.
Yeah, I mean, just as perspective, Revlimid is a drug whose characteristics, its activity, its profile is ideally suited to be an upfront therapy for patients. And that's what these studies, whether it's MM015, MM20, and other studies, are designed to demonstrate. MM20 is really the backbone study, 1,600 patients, that looks at RD, Revlimid with dexamethasone versus amalphalin, prednisone, and thalidomide, which is the standard of care in many markets outside the United States. So it really differentiates amalphalin-based therapy versus RD backbone therapy, which the marketplace has evolved to in the United States just because of physicians' choice and patients' choice of understanding the data and what patient results are. It's very, very important to get the label outside the United States. It is an event-driven study, so I believe we began to accrue in August of 2008. So the study has been going on for a long time. So we're now beginning to see events. And so we're optimistic that we will see final PFS with interim survival data in the coming months. So it is a relatively near-term phenomenon in terms of a few months that we'd expect to see the MM20 data. At the same time, we expect to see updated survival data from MMO15, which is the MPR study versus MP. So there's a number of opportunities. Our goal as a company is to ensure that we have the broadest label for Revlimid, certainly adding the upfront. But if our goal is to get both MMO15, which would show the Malflan, prednisone, Revlimid into the label, especially in Europe, where Malflan is still used in some places, but also importantly the RD. So both of those, and they're not mutually exclusive. Whatever one would come first and have the data, we could have the discussion with the regulators and get it into the label. Our goal is to broaden that label as much as we can, and hopefully we'll have data here from MM20 in the next few months.
Thanks. So I guess the next question is, with regard to the overall IMiD franchise, how do you enhance your leadership position? Because number one, you have the opportunity to go into other indications. Presumably we saw mantle cell on its way today, but there are a lot of competitors out there. The hematology meeting was December, all sorts of different mechanisms. Sure. You have 292 yourself, the BTK.
Yep.
But how worried are you about the other competitors, the other competitive agents, the other mechanisms, or do you want to work together and make new combinations?
Yeah, I think in very few indications or very few therapies have the opportunity to be a standalone therapy. We're not seeing cures in a lot of cases. I think that Revlimid's a great example in myeloma, where it's used for a long time and it benefits the patient for a long time. And then you'll often see it then be used in additional combination beyond dexamethasone. A third compound can be added to it, can then be brought back in, and there's a sequencing and cycling. I think most of the indications that we're focused on, our goal is to make Revlimid as an important part of the therapy as it can be. And in most of those cases, it's going to be combination therapy with our own products and with other products. So I think it's very important that it get explored broadly in those indications. I mean, we're in some of the lymphomas, we believe Revlimid and rituximab has a great combination as an opportunity for maintenance therapy and upfront therapies, and for follicular lymphoma, diffuse large B cell, and certain other segments of other leukemias, et cetera. So I think combination therapies are critically important. Certainly as you break into indications, it's very important that you have that data and as both a regulatory but also a patient access strategy. And then in the IMiD class itself, when you look at Revlimid, pomalidomide, 122, 220, both in the clinic, and the reason why we feel so encouraged about the IMiD platform is that the knowledge of the actual underlying biology in different indications and in different cell types, we are seeing more potential indications for that class of drugs than we would have thought 2 or 3 years ago. So we think Revlimid will play out. We'll expand into other indications in combination therapy. Pomalidomide, we have myelofibrosis data, a phase 3 myelofibrosis trial that's coming data in the next few months for pomalidomide. So I think we'll see other indications for the existing drugs, but then we're also going to see new compounds come in that are going to target different activities, different indications, and some of the existing ones would hopefully even more targeted, more positive outcomes. So both Revlimid's growth potential is, we think, very strong. Pomalidomide adds a lot to it, and there will be additional compounds coming behind it.
Do you feel, and this is maybe put your bio hat on again, do you feel as if the level of intensity with regard to development in hematological malignancies has picked up over the last couple of years? And with regard to Celgene, do you feel as if you need to run that much faster in order to establish Revlimid in these other indications?
Yeah. I think you have to run pretty darn fast every day. I think if anybody, as soon as I hear, and so hopefully nobody at Celgene, but if you hear about any complacency or people thinking they've achieved what they want to achieve, that makes me incredibly nervous. So I think that every day you should be focused on what you've got to do better, what you've got to prove more clearly, how you advance the case, whether it's the value proposition of your drugs, activity through additional clinical data, better regulatory labels, better. So I think anybody who doesn't think this is one of the most competitive, technologically risky, you've got to always be moving forward. And I think that's an important attribute for individual products, for people, for companies. There is one of the reasons why I wanted to come to this meeting is that there is a little bit of a sentiment about small companies, and I think that I was with a guy from a search firm was telling me about the number of companies had gone from 2,000 to 500 in a certain market cap or size space, and that I do think that it is still a great opportunity for small companies, and that we think that companies like Celgene have to do its part to ensure that the environment for small companies remains positive or improves even from where it has been. It's been a tough time in terms of raising venture capital money. Somebody was mentioning earlier, I was on a panel Thursday night, and it was some of the statistics on what's happening for really drug discovery venture capital, how challenging that is, and that we believe so fundamentally that it is small units, small companies where great innovation can come from. And we are focused on both ensuring we advocate for those policies, because we believe in the end what's best for patients and innovation is going to be best for us also. But at the same time, we think it's important for our own success to have strategies that can be very collaborative and consistent with the success of smaller companies. And I think that if you look closely at Celgene, we have formed companies in our own laboratories by having scientists who either were part of Celgene or were not part of Celgene start companies with our own seed capital. We've started companies with one venture capital in our one venture capital investor in our laboratories. We have looked to do all kinds of different kinds of collaborations that recognize that there are opportunities for companies that outside of that we can provide assets, whether it's expertise or capital. We've invested in several different investments that make investments in academic medicine molecules and then develop themselves until they get proof of concept into phase 2, and then we own the rights to it. So just I do think when there's challenges, like there are challenges in the system today of having the ability to raise the kind of capital to either get started or advance to proof of concept, I think companies like Celgene, it makes sense, certainly makes sense for us to have a business strategy that says we want to provide ways that are in our interest. We're here for a freaking business to make money and make the Celgene future brighter, but we think there's a lot of win-win situations out there that might have historically gone a different path, and so that we have tried to be receptive to creative ideas and have some of our own creative ideas to provide ways that can answer some of the important questions that might not get answered, and where individuals can really make a difference and small companies can make a difference.
Thanks.
Sorry for that.
No, that was good. That was
distraction.
I hear you'll be hosting a business development seminar later today.
We'll
A couple minutes left. We haven't touched on Abraxane.
Yep.
I want to just, if you can talk about the growth drivers. It's heading toward $1 billion, more than $1 billion. Are you looking at other combinations, other indications, or do you have your hands full with the recent data?
No, I think, first of all, our job is to be very clear that we've got to maximize the opportunity in breast, with the non-small cell lung cancer last fourth quarter of last year in the United States, the pancreatic data, getting that application to the FDA as quickly as possible all around the world, get that approved. We'll see the melanoma overall survival data the middle of the year, and we think that's, when you think about the absolute time of overall survival in that trial, it's very competitive with any compound in that space. So we'll push forward on regulatory front in melanoma, hopefully after the middle of the year. But the same thing goes. When you have success, and clearly the melanoma data and the pancreatic cancer data differentiates the history of what people would have expected from the molecule itself or the underlying chemotherapy. It's our responsibility to take that and really look to capitalize on it. The same thing that we saw last year at AACR about epigenetic priming with azacitidine, to take oral azacitidine and Vidasa to really accelerate a change in the whole paradigm of treating solid tumors. At the same time, we want to use Abraxane as part of that combination. So our job is to take what we have and really understand the underlying science of it. What is the mechanism? Where should that actually, what subsets in pancreatic are most successful, in melanoma successful? What does that mean in other indications and other diseases and other combinations? So that is a high priority. First and foremost, we've got to capitalize on the advantage that we have today, but that should only be the first step. It should be both what are the right patient populations, the right indications, and the right combinations to ensure that we maximize that opportunity. And then what does it mean for other opportunities, et cetera, even earlier in the pipeline to leverage off of that. So we're very excited about the opportunity that we have there, but it's our job to make sure we fully capitalize on it, not just from the data, but from the opportunity that knowledge should give us to advance.
So with the Abraxane being the backbone, and
yes,
then, even
absolutely.
Combinations of drugs that might not be Celgene's drugs, or just
Absolutely. I mean, there are other epigenetic modifiers that we would consider. Well, obviously, we have Istidax and azacitidine. When we think about epigenetics, we like to use ours first, but certainly we're looking at multiple different combinations, triple-negative breast with Abraxane, but other indications, other combinations based on now getting to analyze the data more fully to really understand where it has a potential to do better in other indications with other combinations.
Two more questions. Celia, do we have the...
It says time's up, but
time's up?
I'm not going anywhere but
Can I
back to
ask
Jersey.
two more? Is that all right? As long as you don't have a car code.
No, I'm fine.
What's your favorite drug in the pipeline?
I have to tell you, I'm not going to answer the question specifically because I have to tell you every drug's my favorite. But I do think it raises an important point. Every drug in a pipeline should have a champion. And I happen to be a champion of one or two drugs in our pipeline because I think they need a champion. But we have great people, Tom Daniel and Jean-Pierre Bizzari, Mark Allen. We have a great leadership team at Celgene. And each different compound and class has different champions. I think what is exciting to me about Celgene is that we have the promise of what is visible, an opportunity to exploit that, an opportunity. But we have a number of programs that are behind that don't have the same level of visibility, that are being championed by other people and myself, that over the next 1 to 2 years will become more visible. And if we are right about what we think the potential is, we'll see that become more clear over the next coming quarters.
And
oral azacitidine is one of my favorites, I can assure you.
And my final question, are you less likely to be as aggressive in the share buybacks with the stock price where it is? Or does that not impact it? I can speculate on it. I think that we do believe that when we look at different models, discounted cash flow and other things, that we will continue to be aggressive to manage our capital structure. Exactly what that means, I think that I feel very good as a shareholder of Celgene that both at the management level and at the board level, there are rigorous discussions about how should you manage your capital structure and how should you manage your cash, and I'm confident we'll continue to have those robust discussions in the coming weeks and months. Thanks a lot, Bob. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you.